I am here with Jane Douglas of Oxventure, and well, you have a character who has just joined Idle Champions. For those that do not know, who are not initiated, who is Prudence?
Prudence, thanks for asking, is my beloved warlock, the least ethical member of the Oxventurers Guild. She's very much a Cthulhu worshipping, sort of darkness serving, eldritch blasting, no mercy kind of warlock. And she's my girl. She's a tiefling, by the way.
I'm sold. Yeah, that's.
She's a lot of fun, if you can't tell. She's an absolute ball to play. Yeah.
Warlocks and evil are kind of like my sweet spot, so I am actively excited for all of that.
Good times.
What is it like seeing a character of yours in a video game?
It is absolutely wild to see Prudence in a video game. It was even wild just to see her animated, obviously in the Idle Champion style, just the kind of the simple, the walk. Just even that is just seeing her moving, brought to life like that is just a dream. That sounds really corny. I was trying to think of a cooler way to say that, but it is a little bit of a dream. And we've had some extremely cool fan art over the years, and also the kind of official art for Prudence was the character design was originally by a friend and kind of colleague of ours called Bendix, and the character design is phenomenal. But just to see her animated like that professionally was such a blast. Now to see her in the game, I could not have imagined it happening 4 years ago when the character was born, if you like.
What is your level of attachment to this character? How long have you been playing this character?
Okay, so a little backstory on Oxventure. Oxventure is a spin-off of my YouTube channel, the YouTube channel I run with a couple of friends called Outside Xbox, which was, as you can tell, initially primarily a video game channel, and then Oxventure is our Dungeons and Dragons spin-off that we started 4 years ago with our kind of sister channel called Outside Extra. And we started as a sort of an experiment, as kind of a joke. Wouldn't it be funny if we all played D&D together? Because we'd all been itching to do it and just not quite found the opportunity. And we did it, and we recorded our very first D&D session. So the very first time years ago that we all first played D&D together, that's on tape. You can watch that online. And my first character born in that session was Prudence. So you might say that I am attached to her in a deeply unhealthy and irrevocable way at this point. You know how it is with the first character.
What are there aspects of your personality that made it into this character that makes it so fun? And also, what is it about playing evil characters? Do you have advice? Because I find at least having one party member who is evil, even though they're still helpful in the group, has a very fun dynamic.
Yes, yeah. Okay, where to go with that? Right, so playing an evil character, I mean, if I am in a position to give advice, tentatively, I would say obviously everyone's still there to tell a story and have a great time. So we all know, to play an evil aligned character, it's not equivalent to just being obstructive. You're still trying to have a good time, you're still trying to tell a story, and no one's going to have a great time if we're all still there on the same side. I think that's the most important thing to remember for us anyway, the way we play. We're all still working to the same objective. I think for Prudence as an evil character and as playing an evil character, you kind of have to find the reason why her objectives align with the much the neutral and good aligned characters on the team. And we've always found a reason for them to be broadly, angled in the same direction. So that works out conveniently for us. And in terms of Prudence and where that comes from for her, I have a little bit of I'm going to say it's not so much my personality per se, and more my persona. I think the way we play games on Outside Xbox, the sort of flavor of persona I have when we're playing games is the kind of power hungry, no mercy, take no prisoners kind of evil persona. And so that kind of segued nicely into an evil Dungeons and Dragons character. And it's just so much fun. I mean, it's it's very freeing. Obviously, I try and be a good person in real life here where we are. It is quite freeing to play someone who is the antithesis of a moral, ethically obligated person. And also I think it's interesting to find ways to be the party's bad guy, but still discover affection for your fellow characters, because we've got, you know, a very affectionate group, like a sort of dysfunctional group. It's very, I think Oxventure is, although it's high stakes, it's very like lighthearted as well. There's a lot of joking around and a lot of kind of teasing, and to like find that dynamic where someone is the bad guy, but also like deep down secretly, maybe they love everyone a little bit as well. It's a little bit cheesy, but that's where we're at the moment, and it's a lot of fun. And I think what helps with Prudence is that she's not a kind of stern, sarcastic bad guy all the time. Anyway, she's much more of a kind of gleeful bad guy. She's someone who really enjoys what she does. You know, love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. That's her sort of warlock kind of code, I think.
Kind of looking at examples like Vincent Price in his movies, he always seems to be deliciously happy about doing evil.
That's a great call. Yeah, definitely. Just revels in being kind of spooky.
Yeah,
and like that, like Vincent Price, in fact. Yeah.
Are there any video games that have like changed you in terms of like that you've been surprised? Like sometimes you will play someone who is more good aligned when given the option, or evil, because I find that has changed for me. Like in Red Dead Redemption, the first one, I found I scaled very evil. I don't know why, but Mass Effect series, I tend to go very good and feel guilty at lost when I lose somebody. Strange games affect me differently. Have you run into this at all, or are you just pure evil?
That's really interesting. I would say that because Mass Effect's been going for that long, and I started out as a goody two shoes in Mass Effect, like I've always played, you know, a kind of space hero. But that's the fantasy. I think the fantasy, maybe it depends on the kind of genre of game and the story, the story that you're playing. I think that determines for me like which alignment is going to, you know, produce the kind of the protagonist fantasy that I have in that game. So in Mass Effect, for instance, I think for me it's the good guy space hero fantasy, not the ruthless renegade fantasy. I think that's what I'm in Mass Effect for. So actually, I have always played Mass Effect as a kind of a paragon. Red Dead, I don't know how you can play Red Dead as a bad guy. I'm not really proving what I'm saying about always playing the bad guy, but definitely.
Well, the first one you
Dead,
can. The second one punishes you severely for playing.
That is true. Yeah, it's like choose what you like, but not really. Well, but we are going to punish you. I think. It depends on the setting, and maybe that speaks to how I find how I found Prudence to be, you know, the kind of character I was drawn to in Dungeons and Dragons, because in that like fantasy milieu, I think that was what I found the most exciting. I think, given that sort of like fantasy setting, I was like, what would I have the most fun playing here? And it was someone who's a bit subversive, and maybe someone who's not a kind of golden child hero adventurer, I think. And also I think when we created our characters, we created them at the same time, and there was, although we didn't sort of draw lots to be different types of characters, I think we had half an eye on it will be more exciting to have like a diversity of kind of character types here. And obviously we've got you know, different classes, and I think having different alignments and different personality styles at the same time would just make for the best story. And because we were making D&D, I mean, for our own enjoyment, but also, you know, as content to be watched, we did have, you know, half an eye on what would make an exciting story. If we were writing this story collaboratively, which, you know, in effect we are, what are the characters we'd like to kind of put together and see what happens?
When you were deciding on Warlock, was there anything that informed that decision? Because I do know that you do have a master's degree in physics, and you also were at some point invited to the European space program as well. Were the spells appealing? Because when you look at Arms of Hadar, it is very kind of outer space, fantasy kind of like
Yeah.
spells, kind of, because they're all based on like stars as well, and there's this
Yes.
kind of this space creepiness to it. Did that inform any of your decision, or were you just like down just to play warlock?
I hadn't thought about it like that until you just put it like that just now, but I think you might be spot on, because now that I think about it, that kind of cosmic, exactly that kind of cosmic horror, that Hunger of Hadar sort of realms between the stars stuff appeals to me so much. And I don't think I'd ever quite put the pieces together, that it's like, I love space, I love astronomy, I love, cosmology, that kind of thing. And then I love that sort of that kind of cosmic horror that's not just supernatural, not just spooky, but actually quite science fiction in nature. So yeah, actually, I think when we were starting out, I hadn't perhaps looked as far ahead as Hunger of Hadar, but as a vibe, having Cthulhu as a patron, it all works together in that sort of cosmic aesthetic, that kind of cosmic horror aesthetic that yeah, actually is very me now that I think about it. It really does key into all my interests all at once.
How does Prudence navigate that, having this entity? Is the entity even aware of you, or is it, or have you been stealing magic from this entity all along? For those that don't know what your relationship to your patron is.
The relationship Prudence has with her patron is we hadn't laid it out, I think. Well, no, I know when we first started playing, I hadn't exactly, decided on the nature of this relationship, apart from perhaps a bit mechanically, like she, this is her warlock, this is where her power derives from. But along with our dungeon master, Johnny Chiodini, it's sort of evolved into this oddly, I'm going to say heartwarming, which seems like a funny word to use in context, but she has a very like loyal, almost affectionate relationship, or she thinks she does at least, with her patron, who is, a great old one, a cosmic horror, who in theory, wouldn't know affection if it hit him in the face. But at least that's where we're at, and that's the kind of lightly comedic vibes that we're going with at the moment, where she has quite a sort of fatherly, daughterly relationship with Cthulhu. And that somewhat derives from she's sort of a foundling. She was raised by a hermit in a sort of hermit lifestyle, and didn't have a terribly good relationship with the hermit that would have otherwise been her father figure. So her kind of adopted father at this point is Cthulhu. Yeah.
So kind of the opposite, like when you dance with the devil changes you, you don't change the devil. It's kind of not true for Prudence. Prudence is changing the devil, basically.
Yeah, I think she is sufficiently evil that it's not making Cthulhu like not turning him into a fluffy good guy.
Yeah.
But I think that they can kind of meet each other on their own terms, just because she is intrinsically quite a malicious person, I suppose.
Do you have any key favorite moments that you've had with Prudence that really stick out with you over the years?
Oh yeah, tons. Actually, it's been a treat helping Codename adapt Prudence for Idle Champions, because actually it got way deeper than I expected. Not just character design and here are the spells, but tell us about your character, tell us about your your favorite anecdotes. And I'm like, oh no, now I'm gonna have to like really rack my memory. But after a while they all come flooding back, and then it's quite hard to pick just a small handful. So I think from the early days there's this moment where we first started playing together, and everyone's doing their absolute level best to kind of play according to their alignment, which is how I discovered that actually playing the bad guy is great, because there is a tendency to kind of accelerate towards combat, at least the way we play. Everyone wants to get into combat, and if you are a good character, you're going to have to find a way to square that with with your moral code. Are you willing to kill these people? Are you willing to engage with these guards who are just doing their job? But the fun thing about being the bad guy is that, yeah, absolutely, you're willing to engage anyone with lethal force for any reason. And we went into, I think, one of our very first combat encounters, and everyone was trying to hold back and not do any damage to these relatively innocent guards. And then Prudence just sort of, I think everyone had maybe a few not so great rolls. And then last in combat comes Prudence, just kind of like emerging from hiding and like blasting the face off this perfectly innocent guard. And it felt really good. I felt really vindicated to be like someone who doesn't have to hold back to stay in character. And it feels a little bit like being in not easy mode, but I do admire like my fellow Oxventurers, because they're trying to, role play as authentically as possible, but also there is, you are sort of slightly encouraged to just, get into combat and try and kill people. So yeah, she was the first out of the gates with violence, which I was satisfied with, but also she was really affronted that everyone was like, oh no, what have you done? And she's like, I just solved a problem for everyone. You're welcome. I think the line was like, I remain huffy, but I'm fine, let's carry on, because she couldn't understand that that everyone else was appalled at this unnecessary violence. And she's like, I've solved a problem for us all. Now we can proceed. So that was it. That was in the early days, I think, just before the characters knew each other, I suppose. Obviously, we've all known each other for a very long time, but it was that bit where they're still trying to figure out how to work together. So that was a nice bit of character stuff, I think. Yeah.
What has it been like for you to watch kind of like the fandom around Oxventure grow and around this show?
I mean, it has obviously been our very, very great pleasure. It's probably the most fun we have with content at the moment. It was utterly unexpected. Like I say, we played D&D together. We did a first sort of session together, and it was more of an experiment than anything. We weren't like, okay, now's the time to set up a D&D spin-off, and it's going to run for 5 years, and we're going to make merch and etc. etc. So to see everyone, well, to see those fans that engage with Oxventure and who come back and watch it again and again, and who speak to us about it on social media and talk about their favorite moments, it's so exciting, because we are all, I think I can fairly describe us all as writers. Among our other duties, we are professionally writers on the channels, and to have, I say writers, we're writers and show-offs and nerds and video game players, which is why D&D appeals to us so much, because it combines all the things that we have the most fun doing. And so as writers and show-offs and video game players and I guess actors, if you like, but I would hesitate to say that, but as all those things, to have people come to you and tell you they loved when you did this, or they couldn't stop laughing when this happened, it is, I can't tell you how gratifying it is. It is gratifying is the word, deeply gratifying. Every single day, every piece of fan art, like every meet and greet, obviously, prior to 2020, when we did like live shows at comic conventions, or when we did meet and greets, and when people connect with these characters, it is just a ridiculous treat. Like it is wild and kind of unbelievable that it's even happening. But and also, like I say, extremely gratifying to have people enjoy the show like that.
Do you think there are any fan favorite moments that have occurred around Prudence and around the rest of the group where it just kind of blew everyone's minds? Because it's always fun to look back at like chat and stuff, or look at comments where like people were shocked, and maybe you weren't, right? Like I'm always surprised when I look back on any show I'm in, what the audience is super excited for.
It can be unpredictable, can't it? And sometimes it's really exciting to kind of go back through chat and be like, oh, everyone was really into that. I had not anticipated that in the moment. Where there are fans who particularly enjoy Prudence, I think it is it's the gleeful evil, again, to come back to it. That is the stuff that they seem to appreciate. I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, and I don't want to pretend that she's the favorite or anything like that, but where she is appreciated, I think it is for being the bad guy who really doesn't give a damn. I think that there's a sort of vicarious enjoyment in watching characters do the bad thing and have no regrets and be completely unrestrained by conscience, in a safe space, obviously. So I remember we did our first ever live show, not as in live streamed, but live in front of an audience. Must have been, I guess, 2018, maybe late 20, no, probably 2018, I think it was. And there's a point at which we have captured, or our bard had put to sleep and captured some, I think they were goblin guards, just run-of-the-mill standard goblin guards. And then from there we proceed to interrogate them for information, the standard sort of adventurous stuff, because we need to know what's over the next hill, and they're just the first kind of low level baddies that we'd come across. And Prudence, I should say, she, at one point the interrogation isn't going terribly well, and we're all not doing very well against Johnny's goblin guards. And then at one point Prudence just and I say obviously I have a lot of fun with Prudence, and I want to be clear that I anyway, she get ahead of what I'm about to say, is that she executes one of the prisoners to show the other prisoners that they need to cooperate with us. And as I say it now, that's shocking and awful and dreadful. In the moment, I thought it was hilarious. Now I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, should I be worried? That's kind of alarming. But the reaction in the crowd to your question was really delightful. And because it sort of came out of nowhere a little bit, and a little bit of a sense of, because we were doing a live show and time is really tight, you literally have the theatre for, it must have been like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And so there was just a nice sort of cosmic kind of convergence of Prudence's impatience with anything that's not violence, and the sense that we needed to keep things moving along, for the sense of pacing and story, that I'm like, she executes the goblin to show the first goblin, and everyone's like, whoa, okay, fine. So that I surprised myself there, and I think that was probably that might have been the first sort of violence out of combat that she had done, because for one reason or another, usually it was in a fair fight, and just then it wasn't. So I felt that was pretty character defining for her.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've done play of evil things where I'm like, whoo, looking back, I exploded an elf.
Oh, there we go. Go. Yeah.
But I did in good conscience, actually send the remains to a temple with a diamond in the box.
Wow.
With a note that said "Return to Palor."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was dark.
It.
Well, a lot was on the line, and they were being a goody two shoe. So, yeah. You gotta.
Sometimes someone's got to explode the elf.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's a fair assumption. Was there anything else surprising for Prudence? Because I know you have a lot of different items that the character is associated with. Was that hard? I found that process to be hard for me as well, because I play Avron, and Avron's in the game, and I had a lot of consternation because I played that character since I was 8. So I made Chris Dupuy's life very difficult.
Oh boy,
because I have very strong opinions that were very shiftable about what was important and what was not.
Okay, yeah.
What for the character was important to you in terms of like the ultimate, in terms of like the items? What was important to get right?
Okay, I think the stuff that was really important going in, and I hope I didn't make Chris's life a living hell.
No, you absolutely did not. I'm the worst. Like,
okay.
Well defined. Okay. I am the worst.
Okay, so for Prudence, going in, I was like, well, obviously it's Eldritch Blast. Obviously that needs to be, at the core of everything, because she loves it. Because the fans, they love it. That's that's standard warlock stuff. And so we had to get that right, and also the alignment, obviously, and that is folded into the way she plays in a way that I really enjoy. But in terms of items, it was her book babies, which are a pair of sentient demonic kind of ravenous cannibalistic books. I suppose they're not cannibalistic because otherwise they would eat other books, but do you know what I mean? Man-eating books, let's say.
Right.
Big fangy books that she found in Necropolis-on-Sea, which was one of the other Oxventurers' sort of ancestral homes. It's Corazon's ancestral home. And the first time we visited the place and explored the place, and it was deeply haunted and spooky and everything that Prudence quite enjoys, actually. We went to the library, and Prudence is really given to hunting out old books and ancient wisdom and lore and the occult, all of that stuff. She loves that stuff. So to find these tomes that became not just sources of ancient wisdom, but also like two pets, two babies, kind of like twin books that follow her around, kind of ferocious dogs that are extremely loyal in a way, and those were important. So those made sense as items, I suppose, and also as pets and companions. So we wanted to get those right, and that's Frisky and the Darkness, my two book babies, who are. I think she shows her softness in very odd but occasional ways, where she can be affectionate for a great old one who seeks to destroy worlds, and these kind of demonic fangy books with great big teeth and slavering tongues, that kind of thing.
So a deep affection for evil or things that maybe are misconstrued as nefarious.
There you go. Exactly. She senses a kinship with these kind of these malicious, violent book things. Yeah.
With the popularity of the show, and also going from con to con, I expect people have asked you like how to get into D&D, or have asked you for advice on a great number of things related to tabletop gaming. What stuck out, and what was the advice that you gave?
Okay. I tell you what we do get is not so often people coming up to us and saying, how do you play D&D? Or how do I do better at such and such in D&D? I tell you what, Johnny, they probably get asked this an awful lot because they're the expert. Johnny is much more experienced than the rest of us. For me and for the fellow players, what we get quite a lot from people when we meet them is, I was inspired to play D&D because of you folks. And I think what they're saying is, if you can manage it, I can manage it, because we're on the record, we're very public in, just really finding our feet and not really knowing how it all works. We weren't experienced at all at tabletop when we first started playing. And so I think it demystifies. I mean, we all here understand that D&D is, extremely accessible and inviting and fun, and no one should feel like they can't give it a go. But I think, for certain of our viewers, they had a little bit of trepidation about it. And I think seeing people, such as us, clueless players such as us, go, Johnny, what do I do here? What, you want me to roll a thing and do a thing? Yeah, okay. And just us kind of gradually discovering that it is about collaborative storytelling, and it is about having a good time together. I think that was the key. I think for our fans who were not D&D players, who have since started playing D&D, it was the idea that it is not, obviously it can be as complex or as simple as you like. In a way, it's infinitely adaptable, but just to get the sense that if these people can play it, then probably me and my friends can play it. It seems approachable. So I think if we've done any service, it's by being absolute noobs at D&D and then and finding our way on camera. I think that's it. And in terms of advice, gosh, it's just, if we can do it, then I think if we can do it and we're having this much fun, I can heartily recommend it to anyone else, and heartily endorse the idea that anyone else can give it a go and have a great time.
Was there anything that was like very surprising for you starting out to play D&D for the first time? Because you must have had that same kind of trepidation, and then you're doing it on camera at the same time. Was there something that was there a misconception you had? Because I find a lot of people are like, they think this is how it's going to be, and then it ends up being something quite different. What was surprising to playing D&D for you?
Okay. In the very, very, very early days, I think what was surprising for me and surprising for the rest of us, I think if you go back and watch the early tapes, what's surprising is how much danger we think we're in at all times, as if Johnny is constantly out to get us. And we're friends, you know, there's no reason that Johnny, that they would be trying to kill our characters in session one, you know. But as video game players, I think we're all there going, well, I don't want to like run into the spike trap. I don't want to get like a, you know, insta kill, you know, game over. And I think we had brought that mentality to D&D where, you know, everything is high stakes, everything is, you know, death is around the corner at any instant. And you can see that in our cautiousness. I think we're extremely cautious going in, and it takes us an age to decide to do anything. Like the nice thing about starting out, so we've done live streaming, obviously we've streamed D&D, you know, live for the last couple of years, but when we started out, it was all pre-recorded. And that gave us quite a lot of like forgiving wiggle room to be like boringly planning for like 10 minutes, like talking through 5 or 6 different plans that, you know, that don't pan out, that aren't especially exciting to listen to, that probably wouldn't make great viewing. So I think early on there was a lot of hesitation, and I think after a while you learn to trust each other and trust your DM, if you have a DM like ours, that no one's there to kind of gotcha. No one's there to be like, you forgot to do such and such, and now you're all dead. So that was the very, very early misconception. I think that that it was a lot more rigid and a lot more dangerous than we thought. Than it was. And obviously there's different styles of play. Obviously you could run a game that is extremely like do or die, or, you know, death is around the corner, and, you know, the DM can be more adversarial if that's your flavor. But that was our assumption going in, and actually, you know, we needn't have worried about that quite so much, I think. Yeah.
Is there a single thing that you would find has been your favorite thing, or is it just kind of like have you all become like closer friends because of this, having to have this party cohesion?
Yeah, definitely. It's been I mean, we were all good, close friends and colleagues going in, but I think this work, if you can call it work, more than any other kind of work that we do together, has been really bonding. And I'm going to sound really cheesy now, but yeah, it's been the, as I already said, it's been the most fun, the most kind of gratifying, exciting thing that we've done. And I think it's afforded us some just incredible opportunities. Like we've done the occasional like live stage show as Outside Xbox, as Outside Extra. We've done like live shows, you know, with video games, but none of it can quite stand up to the performance of D&D. And performing together it's such a treat as friends to be on stage having the fun. What can I say? It is a ludicrous like honor and treat to have people want to come and watch you play with friends, you know, do the thing that you are enjoying so much. So I think we've all been like bonded in just like surprise and gratitude at being able to do that stuff together. So yeah, that keeps us going.
Do you and I know you can't answer this, but is there a favorite character you have in the group other than your own, or one that you enjoy?
Well, I know they're going to watch this, so obviously you are my favorite. I'm talking to you. Gosh, no, I don't. If anyone's my favorite, it's Johnny, because Johnny facilitates all of this nonsense and really got it going in the first place. So yeah.
Is there a favorite scenario Johnny put all of you in?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's such a tough one. We all love Halloween. Like, we're big Halloween people, so we tend to do like a Halloween special, and we did a Halloween live show. I think it must have been on actual Halloween in that year, and it was set at the spooky Necropolis on Sea, haunted mansion, ancestral home of Corazon. So that was a real kind of yes, seasonal good time, because I love anything that's like a bit Halloween themed, and that was a spooky good time. I enjoyed that a lot. We had some kind of like spooky walk on music, so the theming was complete. But it's really hard to name just one, because they're all it sounds it sounds a bit weak sauce, like I can't pick one. But
is there perhaps like an NPC that stood out to you?
Yes, several, but there is a mighty powerful wizard in our game called Binbag. I never did ask Johnny why he's called Binbag, but this wizard is, in the Gandalf mold, a kind of classic archetypal, very powerful, very mighty wizard, and unduly and unfairly he gets roasted and ribbed and mocked and ridiculed by not Prudence so much, who I think has a reasonable respect for another powerful magic user, but Corazon and our rogue, and Egbert, our paladin, and Dob, our bard, all have a reasonable amount of disrespect for this extremely powerful NPC, which I think is pretty on brand for Oxventure, which is failing to have the due reverence for characters that are, infinite levels above us. So I enjoy that as a little kind of subversion on the, I love me some Lord of the Rings, but I like it as a little subversion on the kind of beloved Gandalf trope, where you have a, kind of white-bearded, mighty, powerful wizard who isn't given the respect that actually he deserves. So I think Johnny does a great job with Binbag.
I find that often you jump into D&D and you expect that you're going to have these kind of Lord of the Rings moments, and I'm like, the comedy of D&D is kind of inherent, and if you do throw someone who is very iconic, like a Gandalf type, it's probably not going to go the way you think. Because
exactly.
we've kind of been bombarded by these archetypes, and so the fun thing is to go against that.
Yes.
And have the opportunity to not die, perhaps, when you do make fun of those characters. Sometimes.
That's a good point. Yeah. There must be a few Binbags out there. Yeah. I was just going to say that. That's wild that you would say that. I was going to say, except when it's a dragon, because we all know to be respectful to dragons. We all knew it. The first time we encountered a dragon, and it's not like we'd ever discussed what the game plan was should we come up against a clearly powerful dragon. But everyone was like bowing and scraping and like, we're going to wipe here. We're all going to die unless we're respectful of this dragon. So it's so funny that you say that. Is so true.
One of my wife's first D&D experiences was as a draconic soul sorcerer, and they have advantage where they get a boost to persuasion checks with a dragon, and she negotiated with the dragon to not kill them, but then talked a little bit of smack at the end of the roll. Like, kept on talking, and then things went terribly bad. I'm like, when you get a good persuasion check, lean into that, but don't like tempt fate. It is a shark.
Yeah, don't push it. Push it. My toes are curling just hearing about that. I love it so much.
It went badly. No one died, but it was touch and go. What is there something specific that you love about Evil? I always come back to, this was the same setting. I set up a town that was quite terrible. It was full of rogues and thieves, and they were all kind of mean. And it was to the point that the players were like, why would we save this town from a dragon? And they left. And it made me so happy. And there's a certain chaos to D&D, and like the DM may think you're going to go this way, but you go the other way, and it kind of makes me thrilled as a dungeon master. And I think it's more thrilling for players to know that you're not on the rails playing a video game.
Absolutely.
You never get that kind of freedom in any other way.
Absolutely.
Have you had that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're sort of notorious for derailing Johnny's plans, but I think actually there's a little bit of misperception around that, because there's usually a sense that Johnny must have had a complex plan, notebooks full of plans and maps, and this is the kind of dream scenario that they had in mind. This is exactly how the campaign was supposed to go. This is, the kind of the optimum path, and everything else is like a divergence from that, so that the DM has to kind of like run to catch up. But I think I don't actually. I think, if you peek behind the curtain, there's more than one path that we're meant to go along. And I think Johnny like leans into it a bit, because it's quite funny, the idea that, oh no, look, you've undone all my plans again, and you've just decided to follow this random NPC, down a completely different path, and you've gone a completely different way, and you've derailed me again. But actually, that's not really true to the spirit of, it's the theatre of the imagination. You go where you want. It's complete agency. It's complete empowerment. So to your question, it is, I love video games, but when we're still not at the point where a video game can let me go, do you know what? I'm not doing any of these missions. I actually want to go and like start a family on this space station, and I'm going to become, I'm just going to become, I don't know, a spaceship engineer. I'm going to live the rest of my days. And, that doesn't sound like that exciting, a kind of sci-fi D&D equivalent, but just that complete agency, like that complete freedom, like video games are not quite there yet, and that's exactly why I'm here for D&D. It's just the fulfillment of all my kind of wildest video game fantasies, but with friends, and sometimes we're lucky enough to do it for in front of other people.
All right, it's kind of my final question. It's a big one. Like, why should someone play Prudence? Why should someone grab Prudence, and why should someone watch Oxventure? Like, what's your elevator pitch to those that have not?
Okay, yeah. Tough one. Okay, why someone should play Prudence. One of my favorite things about the way Prudence has been adapted for Idle Champions is that when she doesn't get a kill, she gets frustrated, and that kind of revs her up. That like empowers her. And I didn't suggest that in well, I was going to say I didn't suggest that in so many words. I didn't suggest that, but I wish I had, because it's so perfectly on the money, and it's such a fun a fun little twist that failing to get a kill is going to benefit you, because you are so frustrated. And that is more often than not how I encounter combat as a warlock. Like, I'm a powerful dark eldritch warlock, and you'll cower before me, and now I'm going to kill you, and then you fail to get a good roll, and you're like, I'm so embarrassed right now, and that embarrassment is like fueling my fury, so I better get you next time. And I just think that adapts so beautifully into Idle Champions. So I feel like if you've got Prudence in Idle Champions, you really will get the flavor of what it's like playing this kind of grumpy, gleeful, but occasionally very frustrated warlock. And in terms of Oxventure, the reason you should come and check it out and give it a chance, if you haven't already, if you have already, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate you. If you haven't watched it, it is story-led, light-hearted, a bunch of friends playing D&D, which is not the most original pitch, but we keep it short. We do recaps. We have a view to because we've played the same characters for like 4 or 5 years now, so we're aware that there's a lot of lore, a lot of like backstory, but we do our best to keep it accessible. So we promise you won't be out of your depth if you do come and give us a go. So everyone welcome.
All right, what level are you right now?
We've leveled up so achingly slowly, so we are like level 8 now. It's
so slow.
I know, so slow, but I think we're quite reluctant to level up, because we don't want to be as gods just yet. We're having such a good time. I think in our own minds, at least, we enjoy the concept of being like underdog adventurers. Like, you want to be like the hobbits leaving Hobbiton. You don't want to be, everyone like, completely overpowered and just, I mean, obviously everything would power up with us, but just the kind of like classic conceit of underdog adventurers who aren't very powerful, and they're just kind of scrappy, and they're just, trying to improvise. I think that those stories appeal to us so much that we haven't pushed very hard to level up very fast. And you know what? As a warlock, I've got Pact of the Tome. I have got so many spells to like stay on top of, and like some really good ones that I still haven't like pulled out of the bag because there's not been quite the right moment to use them. So I'm like, I'm not ready for more spells. I've got some really good ones that I have yet to kind of give an airing to. So yeah, we've leveled up extremely slowly.
That's fantastic. Jane, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate. Thank you for having me so much, Todd.